Alright, Shalom. Shalom. First and foremost, before I begin, I'd like to give all praise, all glory, all honor unto Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Ruach HaKodesh. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of great mercy. As always, I say Shalom unto the elect. It's your brother here, Isaiah, coming back to you with another video. Lord, well, it is edifying. Alright, topic of this video is You Are the Sons Part 1. Wanted to dive into here is the how you say state in which Esau Edom was in before the Renaissance period began, right? What were they like? What were they doing, right? Right, the state that was in which led to the Renaissance, right? So wanted to go into here, as you could see the pictures on the screen, the so-called wild man of medieval, right? So what would that take place is when I go to Revelation, the 13th chapter, and starting from verse 1, right? It says, I stood up on the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the earth. Right? So why these men liken unto beasts? The bestial in nature, right? If you go to Ecclesiastes, or even I bring two precepts, Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, and the first, the 18th verse, right? And I said in my heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, right? Aforetime in the earth it had three categories of men, before we had all these nations, right? Before we had we always had the nations, my apologies, but before, right, it had three categories of men on the earth, right? So before we were called the Israelites and before Esau Edom was called the seed of the wicked, three categories of men were the sons of God. Sons of God could also be called the sons of man and the Israelites today. Then you have the sons of men, which are the rest of the heathen nations upon the face of the earth. And then the seed of the wicked is Esau Edom, the head tribe of the heathen nations on the earth right now, right? So when it says the estate of the sons of men, they're speaking about the other nations. Esau Edom could also fall under that category, right? So when they say here's what it says concerning them, it says that power might manifest them, that they might see that they themselves are beasts. So are these men expressly beasts? No, they're bestial in nature. As you can see this here, which we get into, right? When you drive these men away from civilization, right? Because throughout history, right? I believe it even has a book. I'll do quick research here. How blacks civilized Europe. Slovakia. Should have a book here. Let me see. See if I see it. Right, name of the book. Well, I seen one here, but I'm not seeing I seen two here. But the one I remember the name being How Blacks Civilized Europe. But it have one here, it's two here which similar titles. One is How Africans Brought Civilization to Europe by Sunday Adelaja, and then also in the book, lovely to see, it says we learn, the cover of the book, of course, I'm looking it up on Google and reading it right now. It says we learn from history that we don't learn from history, right? We learn from history that we don't learn from history. Then have another one here, it says, name of it as well is How Africa Developed Europe. But that may go into from Nkwazi and Mahango, right? But that one, in my opinion, based on the title and based on the cover, I believe that might lead to how the resources from Africa is what was used to develop Europe. But nevertheless, you understand where I'm coming from, that, it was the so-called Jake man is who civilized these people, right? These people were living as beasts, as we're going to go into, right? So are they expressly beasts? Can you call that either my man or dog? Well, you can. Revelation. You get that quick. Revelation, the 22nd chapter. See what it says here. Those that are without are dogs. Same pony red letter. The word says Yahushua said it. No, not Yahushua, but Revelation 22 and 14. Beautiful precept. Revelation 22 and 14. I'll go down to 15. It says, Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and may enter in through the gates into the city. Right? City speaking about Jerusalem. When I read Revelation 24 chapter, it says, measure the city according to the measure of the man, and the measure of the city was 144. Now we know in Revelation 7 chapter, 144,000 Israelites were sealed, right? To receive exemption from judgment and to ultimately be the governing body that would, establish righteousness through the earth, establish the law of Yahweh through the earth, alright? In the kingdom to come. That's another topic for another video. But it says, verse 15, for without are dogs, because it said, blessed are they that do his commandments. And we know Baruch, is it Baruch, the 4th chapter, for 1. I'm not remember that. Or is this right? Baruch 4. Luke 4 and 1, it says, this is the book of the commandments of power, and the law that endureth forever. All they that keep it shall come to life, but such as leave it shall die. So what, with all the commandments of Yahweh Shem Shai, you live in a dead like state, and that was not given unto the other nations. He separated the sons of Adam, Sirach Sirach, let's get it here quickly. Sirach 17, Sirach 16. Sirach 17. Is it 17? Well, I see the one I'm looking. I believe that could be second or just 6 then, but another chapter in Sirach, but it's a one here which will expound upon my point. It's Sirach 17 and verse 11. It says, besides this, he gave them knowledge. I said that 7 jump to 11. So Acts 17 and 7, with all he filled them with knowledge of understanding and shewed them good and evil. Jumping down to verse 11, besides this he gave them knowledge and the law of life for an heritage. He made an everlasting covenant with them and shewed them his judgments. Jumping down to verse 17, for in the division of the nations of the whole earth he set a ruler over every people, but Israel is the Lord's portion. So the Lord separated Israel from the rest of the world. Why? He's a separatist. He's the kind of man the Lord is. He's a separatist, right? So he enlisted us to be the sons of God, right? Psalms, the 82nd chapter, the 6th verse, ye are gods, but ye shall die as men. And everybody else, right? They're likened unto dogs. Why? Back to Revelation 22 and verse Revelation 22 and verse 15. For without our dogs, without the commandments, without the law, without the covenant, is a dog. They're likened unto a dog, right? So you wanted to get into that dog-like state in which Esau Edom would have, found themselves in after being run out of Europe. Right? Because when you go back to Revelation, the 13th chapter, there was a mark for his kingdom, right? A certain time period his kingdom would reign, right? Salakia, a bit under the weather. Revelation 13 and verse 1, it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, right? Having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now this beast is representative of the Edomite power structure which governs through the earth from the Greeks, right? So, the Greeks, which you go tell you here, upon his horns, 10 crowns, upon his head the name of blasphemy, verse 2. And that beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, right? Why does it liken it unto a leopard? Daniel, the 7th chapter, the third kingdom or third empire that would rule in the earth and these heathen. That was the beginning of the Edomite rule. And the Edomite rule, like in the first empire, unto the leopard. Why? The leopard is a swift animal. One of the swift, you can do a research, one of the swiftest animals in the world. And liken it unto a leopard because of the length of time it would take for the Grecian Empire, beginning with Alexander, of course, to conquer the known world at the time, right? So as the Greeks, starts with the Greeks, then came to the Romans, but after the Romans, right, which we get here at Revelation 13 and 2, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, right? His mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. With the dragon representative of Esau, Edom of the Roman Empire, right? When you go into the Roman Empire, Salakia, the Roman Empire, when you go into Revelation 12 chapter, it says, I'll read that, Revelation 12 and 3, and there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Red, you know this red dragon references Esau, Edom, Revelation, Salakia, Genesis, the 25th chapter, right? Revelation, the 6th chapter. It says, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head, right? And his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven. Who's the third part of the stars of heaven? This referencing Judah, Benjamin, and Levi. Who was Judah, Benjamin, and Levi underneath? When this Revelation 12 was taking place, they were underneath the Roman Empire, right? You can read throughout, you can read Luke, the second chapter, where Yahushua's father had to go back to Jerusalem, right? Because Claudius, I believe, was the emperor at the time. So like Claudius, who was the emperor at the time, commissioned that there should be a taxing or a census, right? So they were basically numbering people who the empire had jurisdiction over, right? So Yahushua's father had to go back to Jerusalem, to city of David. Why? Because he was of the house and lineage of David to conduct the census, right? So that being said, that being in mind, it says, and his tail drew the third part of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth, right? So he took us from our rulership and authority and brought us down. David spoke about that the sword of the Lord is, put Israel in the position they're in today. Sword of the Lord references Esau, Edom is given the blessing of the sword. You see, the wicked which is thy sword, the wicked, Malachi 1:1-4, is Esau, Edom. It says, and a dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered for to devour her child as soon as it was born. So these are related to the Roman Empire. These events took place in the time of the Roman Empire by the hands of the Roman Empire through the Herodian dynasty. They are attempting to get rid of Yahushua upon his birth. Matthew the 2nd chapter gives you that history, right? So now that we know the dragon reference, and just a brief synopsis, right? Who the dragon reference is, go back to Revelation 13. It says the dragon gave Rome its power. Why? Because the military might, right? The Edomite power was, magnified through the Roman Empire, right? The military might which the Roman Empire possessed, it was great. To the fact where when you read Daniel, the 7th chapter, like in the Roman Empire, it begins to list the beast. I have it here. Daniel 7:7. After this, I saw in the night vision, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It had great iron teeth. The military might of the Roman Empire was magnificent, right? That is how they forwarded the empire and they established the empire and at that time through the military might, through the sword. Right? Scripture not mention of a sword is furbished. That sword was furbished through the Roman Empire. It allowed them, right? One of the furbishings was the Roman Empire. It allowed them to extend the power and authority in the earth, right? Through basically, here we're going to get down or lay down, right? So verse 3 now is the point I wanted to head to, is, that will eventually come to an end, right? Verse 3, I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. What? So it had 7 heads. Listing the 7 heads now. Grecian Empire, the Roman Empire, Germania Minor, Germania Major, the French, the Spanish, the British, right? And out of the British came the Americans who rule today. This is really the revived Roman Empire right now. You could see the revival began during the Renaissance period, right? Which we'll get into in a later video. I don't want to make this video too long, right? But the revival was during the Renaissance period. When you go into the word Renaissance, is a revival of the classics. When you go into the classics, it's Greek and Roman literature. Greek and Roman ideologies was revived within the earth, right? So now, when you tap in to Revelation 13 and 3, it says, so I saw as one of it says, as it was wounded to death. Why was it wounded to death? Because if you look at all the empires that ruled through the earth, we just see ones that Daniel 7 lists, right? Because that was the beginning of the scattering of the Israelites all over from since we came into our land. That's who the Lord counted when we read Second Ezra 13 chapter 11 chapter, and not thou the fourth beast of whom I made to reign in my world, right? The fourth beast of whom I made to reign in my world. So it begins with the Assyrian Babylonian Empire, went to the Achaemenid Empire or the Medo-Persian Empire, as another way to say the Medo-Persian Empire. Then from there went to the Grecian Empire. The fourth empire he's speaking about is the Roman Empire, right? It says, and it was wounded to that. Why? Because it ruled, the Edomite rule sort of ended there. It ended there, right? And they were put in a period of captivity for 1,000 years. That is what we want to touch here. This period of captivity they were under for 1,000 years, then being revived, right? So now, it says they were wounded to death, so the Roman Empire fell, right? And his deadly wound was healed. It was then revived within the year through the Renaissance period. And all the world wondered after the beast, right? So now, going to Revelation 20th chapter. Revelation 20th chapter, right? It says, its headline is Satan bound, right? It says, and I saw an angel come down from heaven having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain within his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon. The dragon references the Roman Empire. That old serpents carry it back to what the garden. This is how the scripture readers used to link Esau Edom to Cain. Isaiah 34 as well, talk about the people of my curse, it shall come down upon and do me, and the people of my curse indignation. But when they tap back in, when were the Edomites cursed? Goes back to Cain, the forefather Cain. That is how Cain was the seed of the wicked within the earth, and they revived, or they came back through Esau Edom, right? So now, or the lineage was revived through Esau Edom, right? So now, it says that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan. And they go into the word devil here, simply means deceiver, right? It says deceiver. The Greek word is diablos, G 1228. It says prone to slander, slanderous, accusing falsely. Going to the scripture, Psalms 55, thou slanderest thy brother, thy own mother's son. Who is that? Jacob and Esau, carry right back to Jacob and Esau. So who was the slanderer in Jacob? With Jacob and Esau? Esau, right? It says, accusing falsely the accuser of the virgin is cast on Revelation 12 chapter. Who accusing the virgin day and night before we go? Esau, laying snares and stumbling blocks, and then when they fall into the snares and stumbling blocks, say, Lord, look what you do. Because the wickedness he committed, because the sins he committed, all while absolving yourself from the responsibility because you ultimately committing the act. I believe that I go back to, let's slip my mind right now. Is one of the philosophies of the Illuminati. I can't remember the name of it, but basically the synopsis of it is they could cause you they could cause you to commit sin or commit iniquity in the earth and be absolved in their mind from the responsibility of bearing any responsibility for that. Why? Because you're supposed to know right from wrong. So aka they could lay snares in front of you, put you in a fucked up community, tell you, give you laws, right? They write their own laws, make their own decrees, give you a judgment or punishment for breaking them laws and decrees, but also put the only way for you to survive in this situation or get any better in this situation is by making you break those laws and decrees. So simply, right, murder or selling drugs is against Esau Edom law, but you flood the black communities with guns and drugs and make that the only way, the only means of escape. So then when they do sell the guns and drugs, they sit down there and say, all right, well, look, you all wicked. It's against the law to sell guns and drugs, which it is. I'm not giving, Jake's an excuse, right, to do the wickedness and the folly, but you ought to bear some responsibility in this too. Right? Scripture make mention of deceiving and deceive as the Lord. You ought to bear some responsibility in this too. Right? It says, I can't remember the name right. With is a term in the, I may research it, right? May do a video on that, right? But it's a term the Illuminati does use to justify the wickedness. So the fact that you know what you're gonna do is wrong and you still do it, although the lady wicked snares in front of you, right? The fact that you know what is wrong and you do it, they absolve themselves from all blame and responsibility from that situation, right? So now, finishing off the definition, it says a culminator, a false accuser, slanderer, metaphorically applied to a man. So they could call a man the devil or a devil. The ideology that is have a single devil you have to look out for. No, that false according to the Bible. There are many devils, there are many antichrists. There are people that walk in instead of Satan and are about to get a precept. It says, applied to a man who by opposing the cause of power may be said to act the part of the devil or to side with him. There's no such thing as the devil. Right? So now, going from Diablos, we're going to the word Satan. Satan should just mean adversary, which is in the Greek is G4567. Satanas, it says adversary, one who opposes another in purpose or act, the name given to the prince of evil spirits. So yes, there's a prince of evil spirits named Shatan in the Hebrew, Satan, right? An inveterate adversary of power. And Hamashiach, when you go to the first time Satan is mentioned in the scriptures, and not the first time, but the first time written, like how the order of the Bible. Because the first time, if you're talking about reading, the first time should be Job, right? Context of the book of Job would lead you to believe that Job was written, could be one of the books before Exodus. Because it doesn't have any, it mentions a son of God. You don't see the word Israel in the book of Job, right? That's how before the nation of Israel was formed, we could say the book of Job was written, right? The first time Satan was in the Bible, you could say Job, but the first time it's written here, like when I search it, it carries it to First Chronicles 21:1. And what does it say? and Satan stood up against Israel and provoked David to number Israel. So that is Satan's job, right? To be the adversary unto Israel, whether spiritually, right? Spiritually, he's going to talk to wicked people to lay snares to the nation of Israel physically, right? It says, he incites apostasy from power and to sin, circumventing men by his wiles, right? It says, by his demons, he's able to take possession of men and inflict them with diseases, right? 2, the 0 point here, is Satan like man. A Satan like man, right? So with that understanding, finish Revelation, is 20th chapter and verse 2, Salakia, verse 3, Salakia, verse 2, and we start back at 2, and he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. Right? There's a period in which you would see this picture on the screen. This is how they were in that period of time. Right? It says, and cast him into the bottomless pit. Bottomless pit references Europe. 2nd Ezra 5 and 24 likens the lands into pits. So the land of Europe is a pit. And why does it make mention of it being bottomless? Why? Because it has no resources there. Right? And shut him up and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more. Where was Satan walking about the earth deceiving the nations in a physical form? Because he talk about casting them down into a bottom. It's physical, you know. They're not hell. It's on the earth. So if you could come to the synopsis that it's on the earth, it's have to be talking about people on you. And let's see Satan walking around the place deceiving nobody. Psalms 5 and 9 go tell you who the receiver is. The mouth is an open sepulchre. Speaks about Esau Edom. Them is the receivers, not Satan, because it can metaphorically be applied to a man. It says that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed a little season. Right? Right, so now we like to go to Precept was just in my mind. Daniel 7, right? It says, no. Where is it? So, right? I just get back my train of thought. 2 Thessalonians. Second Thessalonians headline, man of lawlessness. It says, verse 2 Thessalonians 2 and 3. Let no man deceive you, for that day shall not come except they come a falling away first, and a man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Right? It says, jumping down to verse 8, then shall that wicked be revealed. Who's the wicked? Malachi 1 and 4. Whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth. Prophets consuming, right? Then you know, inquisition being made. First and foremost, starting with the apostles and elders of GMS concerning Esau Edom moon. Right? Concerning Esau Edom moon written here today. It says, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, right? It speaks about the brightness of his coming, Revelation in 9th chapter. Right? Part of the brightness of his coming is the nuclear missiles. And when you say nuclear missiles was made for to slay the third part of man. Which third part of man is that speaking about? Esau Edom. It says, even him. So which is him? Whose coming is after the working of Satan. With all power and signs and lying wonders. Who coming after the working of Satan? Esau Edom. So not expressly speaking about Satan in Revelation 20 from 1 to 3, speaking about a man, a race of people who working in his stead, who doing his work in his stead. Right? Same way the Israelites were set up to keep the commandments, the laws, the statutes of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. Right? There was a group of people set it up to keep the laws, the statutes, the commandments of Satan. Right? So now, when I go now to verse, because this is how you can understand it, because we had to tap into that a bit. Questions are in the world, things you would have ponder, right? Because I knew about the Uga state, the state that wasn't in the world. I knew about it to a certain degree. Once I had a master, I did a lot of research. I knew about it to a certain degree, right? Questions to ask. Well, if these people were in such a decrepit state, how could they rise up from such a decrepit state and then gain all authority and power within the earth? Vital question to ask, because something I was following within the world. Something I was following within the world, the black unconscious community, right? To what I watch him try get out of that. Never really stuck with me, because them claim concerning so-called black people, I like to group everybody together, right? So-called black people. So anybody 144 can watch him shirt, watch him talk with that shirt. So right. Like to group so-called black people together with all black people. Like to group all black people together, right? So the ones dwelling in Africa, in Ghana, in Congo, right? That don't carry the vibration and the spirit of Israel, man. They all have these one. That's what I like to do. But one of the claims I would like to make is, black people are just minding the business in Africa. One day a man come up on the shores of Africa preaching Jesus, and then that's a day. Shit will be fun. But what I like to say, not only will we minding with business, but that's how I know about that book, right? How Black civilized Europe. You can probably find a video on it on YouTube as well. Is the book still here? Right. How Black civilized Europe, right? Things like the Moors, the Byzantine Empire, research things like that to see who was ruling. See that 1,000-year period, what was everybody other than Esau Edom doing? Yeah, what was, ouch, let me see this. Is it a book? It says, and African diaspora. So what were everybody else doing? Everybody other than Esau Edom was living life on the earth, right? And what I like to say concerning the blacks is that, we had empire, rulership, dominion. We was the biggest, strongest things walking around, right? Which may be true, but then you have to understand this. You have to ask logical questions like this. How could a man, right? You just look up Christopher Columbus, look at the clothes he was wearing, look at the things I was doing, the things I was eating, the lifestyle I was living. How can men like that then come to the shores of such a powerful, right, and dominant people and subdue them so easily? These is questions you have to ask. These is questions the black, right, yeah, I remember the name of the movement, we call them, right? A lot of people fall under it, Egyptology, the Moorish, and all of these people that fall under that, right? You list them, or I like to list them as so just set my mind again there. Black Pan-Africanism. Let me see if I can make sure that's the correct term. Right, is it here? It's Black Pan-Africanism. It says AI overview. Black Pan-Africanism is a global movement and ideology uniting people of African descent worldwide, fostering solidarity, cultural pride, political self-determination to overcome legacies of slavery, colonialism, and racism, advocating for liberation and unity of Africa and its diaspora through shared heritage, common goals, and collective strength. My question is this, right? Based on that, based on the history these people will give you concerning so-called black people, is how could we go from that state against such a freaking low, look at this low level man. No knowledge in him. No, he doesn't, his soul which is lifted up in him is not upright with him, but upright in him, but he just shall live by. Look at this nigga. Look at him. How could this, because this is a nigga, right? You look up, well, he's a nigga, right? See what I want to make black people out to be, and what I influence black people to be via the social media, right? The television, right? All of this shit, the hip hop, all of the things they do to feed shit into black people's mind to, bring we down mentally. All what they done to us to do that, they are that naturally. Naturally, you leave Israelite man on an island without any negative influences, he will do righteousness. Speaks about that within the scriptures. You have a zeal for power, but not according to knowledge. He speaks about the righteous man doing right even as he's righteous. So even as he is righteous. KJV. Right. It says, little children, let no man deceive you. He that they Salakia. They 1 John 3 and 7. It says, little children, let no man deceive you. He that doeth righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. So an Israelite man will eventually, you put him on an island by himself, will eventually seek to do some form of righteousness. The elect, of course, right? I'll say it like that, the elect. You put Esau, Edom on an island by himself, there's a whole great deal of folly will take place, right? But to highlight some of that folly now. Job, the chapter, I think we close here, right? It says, I back this with Daniel, the 4th chapter, right? This is what took place with Nebuchadnezzar, right? This is what took place in Nebuchadnezzar happened with the Edomite nation on a whole. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. The so-called white people, 144, Carolina version, share. Daniel 4. Right, it says, right, Daniel 4 and 16. It says, let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him. When you say heart, the Hebrew word for heart is lab, that goes back to your inner mind, right? It says, be given unto him, like 7 times pass over him, right? Daniel 4 Daniel 4 and 23. It says, whereas the king saw a watcher and an holy one coming down from heaven and saying, hew the tree down and destroy it, yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beasts of the field, till 7 times pass over him. Right? Verse 24. That day, verse 25. That they drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field, and they shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and they shall wet thee with the dew of heaven, till 7 times shall pass over thee, till thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Right? right? And we tell you why. Daniel 4:32 tells you why. Just read it a bit there by the decree of the watchers that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will. Right? When they go now, 4:32 it says, and they shall Daniel 4:32 and said, Isaiah 31, while the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. Took place with the nation of Israel, the kingdom was departed from them. Right? Salakia. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen, and 7 times shall pass over thee until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will. So when you walk in great pride, right, you don't acknowledge the Most High. Kingdom does pass from kingdom, from nation to nation, once you don't acknowledge the Most High. That's what take place in the nation of Israel. Right? So if the Lord didn't spare the nation of Israel, much less these other nations, especially Esau Edom. Right? So now, given the fact that, of course, you read second is just the just get quickly the 11th chapter, tell you why his kingdom going into perdition, but the state in which the kingdom was in that allowed them to be driven from men. Right? Second is just 11 and verse 40. It says, and the fourth came, represented by the Roman Empire, and overcame all the beasts that were past and had power over the world with great fearfulness, and over the whole compass of the earth with much wicked oppression, and so long time he dwelt upon the earth with deceit. For the earth has thou not judged with truth. Jump down to verse 43. Therefore is thy wrongful dealing come up unto the highest, and thy pride unto the mighty. The highest also are looked upon the proud times, and behold, they are ended, and its abominations are fulfilled. And therefore appear no more thou eagle, nor thy horrible wings, nor thy wicked feathers, nor thy malicious heads, nor thy hurtful claws, nor all thy vain body, that all the earth may be refreshed and may retain, being delivered from thy violence, and that she may hope for the judgment and mercy of him that made her. Right? So this led to what? Salakia. So this, right, in which the Roman Empire was being ruled to govern the level of debauchery, right? They were then driven from men, right, and carried into the Caucasus Mountains away from civilization, and Job Tite will tell you how they was living, right? So this is why there would be a need for a renaissance. Right? Job Tite, we did not one, but now they that are younger than I have mean the region. Right? Who's younger than I? Job, the Edomites, right? So they that are younger than I have mean division, right? But why younger than them? Why they younger than we, even though the born before we speaks about things being done in the spirit, right? So within the spirit, in the heavens, the Israelites have preeminence. Point blank, straight and to the point. Israelites have preeminence in heaven. Literally, where the Most High do, the Israelites have preeminence, right? So that's how, through the Spirit, right, the Israelite nation was created first. The Israelite nation was separated from amongst men. The Lord talked with the Israelite nation first. The Lord gave the laws unto the Israelite nation first. The heathens will be given the laws, and also the Lord was in covenant with the Israelite nations. The heathen nations were not being covenant with Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. So in everything, the Israelite nations have preeminence, right? There were things given unto us first that would later be given unto the heathen, such as the law. And then there was agreements made with us that would never be made with the heathen, right? So now, Job 31, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock. Why? do your research into that, why people love dogs so much, what they be doing with them dogs. It's not that video. It says, yeah, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished. For want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat. They were driven forth from among men. Same thing happened with Nebuchadnezzar, happened to the nation of Edom as a whole. They cried after them as after a thief, right? To dwell in the cliffs of valleys, in the caves of the earth, and in the rocky Caucasus mountains, right? This is how you know the so-called white man today is biblically the nation of Esau Edom, predominantly, right? Because it have tares amongst the wheat and wheat amongst the tares. It says, among the bushes they brayed, and at the nettles they were gathered together. And now I am their song, I am the byword, they abhor me. They flee far from me and spare not to spit in my face. So they went from being in such a lowly position to freaking so much pride in Lamentations 2:15 is this, the perfection of beauty, right? All the nations passing and wagging the tail and hissing at Israel, saying it's this the perfection of beauty. Right? Lazy people did not choose to set near themselves. How? Look at these people, there's basically dumbasses, but that was done unto us by Yahweh Shem Shai for a purpose, right? But here you can see that this man is seen on the screen. This is the lifestyle he saw Edom was living, right? They have no knowledge. Psalms, there's a further back point and I'll get up out of here. Psalms 14 and there's all the nations as a whole, but specifically so Edom. Psalms 14 and 1, it says, the fool had said in his heart, there is no power. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There's none that do it good. Who's the fool? So Edom. Verse 2, the Lord looked down from heaven upon the children of men to see if there were any that did understand and seek power. They are all gone aside. They are all together become filthy. There's none that do it good, not one. So you see, it's naturally within them to be natural brute beasts, right? You see by the way they govern the earth. When they give a child, scripture makes mention of a child being an authority, giving them rulership over the earth, just giving it into the hands of a child. This is how they react, this is how they get on, this is how they live their life. You put them in solidarity. Solidarity, right? See how they get on. See, do it. You put them, look at them ruling everything the earth right now, and them have more people showing out on crack than the so-called black man. Why? Why is that? That's who they naturally are. Imagine there was a really detestable situation. Them would be basically dogs. You could have get one of them as a well. They wouldn't get one of them as a pet because they'd have fuck your other pets. But I think I'll leave it there. I'll end it there. Lord, well, this video was edifying and that you were edifying. Because I say, Kal Halal Yamla, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Kodash. Double honors unto the apostles and elders of great milestone. As always, I say Shalom to the elect. This was our brother Isaiah saying Shalom.